Hi, how are you? It's great to have you.
We're okay.
I can't hear you, I think.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we're good now. Yes, well, CZ, you have certainly made a lot of headlines this week and just in general, and as soon as this morning, I saw that Binance had suspended deposits of USDC and USDT on Solana. So I just wanted to start there asking you about the news. Why did you make the decision to do that?
Actually, I'm not sure of the details on that one. Our team made the decision. I would assume there were some issues with Solana network or something. I don't know the details, actually. I was at a conference in Milken in Abu Dhabi while that happened. So I actually need to ask.
Got it. I saw you met Paris Hilton at the conference. It's really fun.
Yeah, I'm seeing her later for drinks.
Yeah, but look, all eyes have been on you this week, obviously, and there's been a lot said about the sort of, Binance and FTX situation. FTX is collapsing now, and I'm just curious, how do you feel this will hurt your business?
Oh yeah, it will hurt our business and the industry in multiple ways, and the consumers. Well, first of all, many consumers are really hurt financially. They have money stuck on FTX, etc. That's going to really shake confidence in trust, credibility in this industry. So now people withdrawing funds from centralized exchanges and the volume will decrease. The regulators all around the world will be scrutinizing us very heavily going forward. And getting new licenses around the world is going to become much harder. So we'll have a lot more education to do. We do need to increase transparency of our businesses significantly. That itself is actually probably a good thing. So this is going to be like a lot of impact. Short-term negative, long-term I actually think many of them are actually going to be positive.
How dependent is your business on trading volumes for revenue?
Well, that's pretty much 90-something% of our revenue. So it goes up and down with the Bitcoin price. The Bitcoin price is pretty much an industry index. And being a larger player in the industry, we follow that pretty closely. But we're okay. So we still run a profitable business today. We're okay, yeah.
The one thing that I can't seem to get out of my head is after watching all of this unfold, I mean, I know you've talked about this before, but surely you must have seen some of this coming, right? When we made those tweets, I mean, it had such a huge impact, and you've been in the industry for a long time.
So some of them, I can do mental mathematics and kind of have some suspicions, but it's very difficult to not understand what's going on in a different platform, in a different business. For me, I was very surprised by the amount of money that they lost and the amount of customer funds they moved and the state of things there. I mean, before this, I can do some mental mathematics. Based on our revenue, and our relative size, and we can estimate their revenue, which is quite small because they charge lower fees. We know most of their public spendings. We know how much they spend on, stadium naming rights, referee jerseys, marketing budgets, etc. We also know how much funds they raised, which is not much, to be honest. And then we also know we kind of have a rough idea, but we never know for sure because they could be doing something different.
Right. I guess, did you know that your words would have such a large impact on the market?
Absolutely not. I thought, look, we're just selling some FTT tokens, and it wasn't a huge stash. It was like 3% of the total supply, and we said we're gonna sell it over a period of months.
Sure, but you're highly influential in the crypto industry. Surely you must have seen it coming, right? That all of this would set off a firestorm. No,
actually, honestly, I did not think it. I still don't think I have that much influence. I think we were the last straw that broke the camel's back. It's not a straw that's really, really strong. This thing has been building up. There's a long chain of events that led to this. People have been losing trust in FTX. Many other people were suspicious of the activities going on. So there was many things that's building up to this thing where we may or may not have been the last trigger. It may be something else. To be honest, even if I didn't make that tweet, this whole thing could still happen. So it's not to say the last straw that have such impact. So it was the buildup of the lack of trust in FTX and people's suspicions. People don't like the way that the DeFi regulations were proposed by them. There's a whole bunch of stuff that built up to it. I may have happened to be the last thing that poked it.
So you were talking earlier about how you are pretty dependent as an exchange on trading revenues. Are you planning on diversifying that at all? I mean, how are you going to prevent against that sort of risk of revenues falling because people don't have confidence in crypto anymore?
So if we want to diversify our revenues today, we can quite easily do that. We have quite a large number of portfolio products. We have CoinMarketCap. When we acquired CoinMarketCap, they were making $3 million US per month in ad revenues. We removed all ads. So there's no banners, no pop-ups, no other projects advertising the ICO on CoinMarketCap. It's a much cleaner experience. We can turn that back on. That'll give us $40 million a year. But we don't need to today. We're Trust Wallet. We can charge a little fee for transactions. We don't need to. So I think today we're still profitable. We're still very healthy. And we want to lower the barrier, the friction for people using crypto tools. We want to get more people to use crypto. So today we don't see the need. But if we do, we have many products. Right now we're single revenue, but we're not single product. We have many products we provide for free, to increase the speed of adoption. But if we want to monetize those, we could.
And is that something you see happening maybe in the short term as some of the pain continues with FTX and there's more fallout?
No, I don't foresee that happening anytime in the short term. I think we're still very healthy financially. We're quite solid. We have a fairly large cash reserves, which we use for acquisitions, investments, and helping other projects. On a day-to-day operations, we're still profitable. So I don't see any need for turning on other revenue matrices. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about reserves later, but first, you mentioned this point on regulation. In your opinion, are there any regulations that could have prevented the FTX collapse?
I wouldn't say prevent 100%, but it could have reduced the chance of that happening. If we had stronger audit on reserves, on how money is used, how client funds are saved, if we had more of those mechanisms, this thing probably could have been prevented or reduced. It's never 100%. When a guy wants to lie, there's many different ways he could fake the data, give you false information, etc. So I think regulations help, but it's never 100%.
Is better auditing of reserves something you would recommend regulators start doing and start implementing?
I do. So we do recommend that. But understand that FTX has been gap audited in the US, right? So they somehow fake that and somehow fool the auditors. So just in this particular case, I'm not sure. I think those things, more audits are really good, but I'm not sure if they will prevent this particular case because we never know how this one guy will react to that.
So I want to ask about this industry recovery fund that you are putting together. Do you know at this point what the size of that is projected to be?
With different numbers being, so it's not set in stone, different numbers being thrown around. I've seen numbers around $2 billion, etc. I'm not sure if that's enough or that's too much. We like to take a more flexible approach where, let's look at how many projects do need this money and how many good projects we can identify. There may be a lot of projects that that just wants money, but they may not be good enough for us to put funds in. We want to help the strong projects that are just in a cash crunch. So we don't know how many they are completely yet. So as time goes on, we need to talk to each of these projects and find out more. Yeah.
I know one of the big considerations with FTX, when they were bailing out all of these other crypto exchanges that were having trouble, was that they were sort of doing that in order to cover up some of their own issues. And I'm curious, watching Binance sort of try to do the same thing and bail out other players in the industry, what is in it for you?
When the industry gets bigger, our revenue gets bigger. So we want to save it. We don't want the industry to become smaller. When FTX did some deals like Voyager, when we were bidding on Voyager, we saw all the data. FTX owed Voyager $530 million US. We were bidding on Voyager at the same time, but we don't owe Voyager any money. So we don't owe anybody else in the industry any money. So, but we still want to save the good players in the industry so that the negative impacts in the industry is minimized. Consumers are protected, and then consumer confidence returns. Hopefully, the industry will continue to grow.
Will you be compensated for providing those funds directly in any way?
Well, there's different ways to get compensation. We can take equity, we can ask for other things, or we can just say, look, so some projects, for example, if it's a blockchain development project, it's an open source system, we may just say we give grants all the time too. So the different projects may have different situations.
And you're considering all of those options at this point for the fund?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
There have been rumors that you are looking into bailing out Genesis. Is that something you are considering at this point?
I can't comment on specific deals. I would assume that they would be NDAs in place, but we are looking at a large number of projects in the space. Almost every project that you hear about in the news, they would have talked to us.
Got it. I think one big question that has come to people's minds is just, if this happened to FTX and they fell so far so fast, what's to say that the same couldn't happen to Binance? And your balance sheet has billions of dollars worth of your own tokens on it as well. So doesn't that make you vulnerable to the same issue that FTX was vulnerable to?
That's absolutely a valid concern. I think all of those, and that concern applies to every business, not just in crypto. So I think as consumers, when we're using platforms, especially if you're storing money onto a platform, including a bank, you should ask those questions. So I think those are very valid questions. But in the blockchain world, things can be much more transparent. So we're doing that proof of reserves, which using like Merkle tree, so that people can verify that the assets are included, and we have full reserves. And so so there are many ways to be more transparent. We publish our cold wallet addresses. We are now working with multiple regulators all around the world on how to do this audit more transparently and more automatically. So we're doing a number of those things, but every user should verify on their own. And if you don't trade often and you can hold crypto on your own, do hold crypto on your own. But holding crypto on your own also have certain risks. So yeah, but we want to be as transparent as possible. The risk is always there. But I think today, Binance, we have 100% reserve for user assets. Operating assets are completely separate. We have a large reserve for that as well. So I think, knock on wood, we are in a we're in a very different situation than FTX. So, but just because one company is mismanaged in an industry doesn't mean every other company is mismanaged. But people should.
Well, that's true, but that is the concern, right? If there's the same sort of vulnerability. Yes. I mean, you have talked a lot about transparency in the past week or so, and yes, you've released the proof of reserves, but at the end of the day, you're still a private company. You're banned from operating in the UK. You're under investigation in the US for money laundering, right? Like, how can users sort of trust you, given all of that?
Don't take information from Rubini verbatim. Those are wrong information. I cleared it up today in the Abu Dhabi conference. Binance is not banned from operating in the UK. Binance does not have a license to operate in the UK. That's different from being banned.
Sure.
UK, right, as a Commonwealth country, allows reverse solicitation. As long as we don't solicit, like advertise in UK, if a UK user come to us, it's fine.
But why don't you have the license?
We're the most licensed platform in the world, globally. We have 15 licenses globally. Many countries haven't issued that many licenses. So that's just a state of things today in the world. We are working collaboratively with the FCA. We have ongoing dialogues with them. We would like to get the license, but today we haven't got it yet. But we're not banned. Those things are different. So don't take what the news too verbatimly. And in the U.S., we have Binance US has 44 state licenses. 10 of them are granted in the last 12 months. So that basically shows you the status of things in the U.S. But yeah, sorry, what was your question?
Yeah, I guess all I'm asking you is, given this backdrop of all of these different sort of maybe issues going on with regulators in certain countries, how can users be certain they can trust you? When you speak about transparency, how do they know that you're actually being transparent?
Yeah, so having a license increases trust, but it's not a 100% thing. It's just that it doesn't, like many licensed entities. Madoff is a licensed fund manager, and they lost 10x more than FTX. So having a license increases trust, but it's not guaranteed. Trust is still built over time with your actions and with your technology. We, in this industry, we have many technologies that can allow people to verify on their own. So with those technologies being more and more deployed, I think the trust will increase. So trust is not a simple one flip switch. FTX has many licenses in the world, and guess what? They were lying.
Right.
So so I think there's many different aspects to trust, but I think as long as we continue to operate ethically, transparently, and always protect our users. Our users are pretty smart these days. Like information, social media is pretty fast and pretty good. So yeah, I think there's no magic solution, and we just got to earn it over time.
What more besides releasing proof of reserves needs to be done for companies to regain trust in crypto? I mean, one thing that comes to mind is even Crypto.com had released their proof of reserves, but now there are some questions being raised about the legitimacy of those. I mean, is releasing your proof of reserves, first of all, is that enough? And second of all, is there anything more that needs to be done in your view?
Yeah, so publishing your cold wallet addresses is just one first. Actually, it's a very short-term temporary method. It's actually not it definitely doesn't mean like just because you publish your cold wallet addresses, you're 100% guaranteed. And as we have seen in certain cases, they actually increases the amount of questions when things don't really add up. And proof of reserve is not the only one. How secure is your wallet structure, infrastructure? What kind of technologies do you use? Your custody solution? There's many things that needs to be done. Even how you handle customer disputes. In which situations do you compensate users or not compensate users? All of these things are like topics that needs to be addressed over time. So yeah, so there's many topics. But a week ago, people were very focused on loans, stable coins, because that's UST Luna. But now, given FTX, now this focus, the latest focus will be on reserves. But there's many other things we do need to focus on. We may or may not be, as an industry, fully focused on them yet. But people learn from recent events. So that's kind of how we evolve. Yeah.
All those measures that you just talked about are those things that Binance has already released?
Pretty much. I mean, we have a very good, we operate at scale. So we believe, best practices for all of these things. And we actually would like to share many of them to make them industry standards, like how we manage wallets. And I think we have one of the most secure technologies for managing wallets. And we also manage the largest wallet in the world. So we'd like to share some of those best practices. So there's many things we would like to share, but we can only do one thing at a time. Today is proof of reserves for the next couple of weeks. We'll get that done, and then we'll move on to the next one. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. I want to zoom out a little bit and talk about the theme of decentralization. I think a lot of people in the past week have seen decentralized exchanges as a solution to some of the vulnerabilities that FTX was facing. I know you have said in the past that you sort of believe both can coexist, but how is that possible?
So look, in a decentralized world, if you and I collaborate together and form a company or form whatever, right? That's centralization. So in an extreme fully decentralized world, everyone's on their own. That's the most decentralized distributed.
But in that world, do you have a business? Because Binance is a centralized exchange, right?
Maybe not, but that's a hypothetical situation. But people will work together. As soon as two people work together, is that centralization or not? That is kind of centralization. And if a company of 2,000 people works together and they build a platform that many other people like to use, in a free market, there will be some centralization. And so decentralization doesn't mean everyone just are completely isolated and everyone's equal. That's communism. That's different from capitalism. That's different from free market. So this decentralization versus centralization concept should be viewed in a balance. Today, we have centralized entities in both the traditional financial world and also in the also in the crypto world. And tomorrow, it's going to be the same thing. Hopefully, over time, the technology will allow more of the tasks to be able to be done by individuals, so that we are moving towards decentralization. Today, if you ask everybody in the world who does not have crypto to hold crypto on their own, they're not technically capable of doing that. I think you and I know that already, right? So if we just force people to go from banks directly to DeFi, most of them will lose their own money because they misplaced it, or they lost their device, or they don't know how to encrypt it, etc. So that's not the best way to grow the industry. So today, more people will be more comfortable with email, address, customer support. So this is why centralized entities still exist. So I think it will coexist for a while.
Do you believe that we'll eventually get to that point where it's a fully decentralized system?
So again, I think when we say fully, decentralization is not black and white. So how do you define fully decentralized?
I guess all I'm asking is is Binance effectively just sort of an on-ramp for people into crypto, and then once they use the centralized exchange, they end up moving to a decentralized exchange like a Uniswap or something of the sort?
I would love for Binance.com to be that role. I do believe if we look a bit further into the future, 20 years or more, I think a lot more people will be using a lot more decentralized technologies that will be built over the next 20 years. So we would love to be that on-ramp. And
but doesn't that long-term threaten your own business?
No, we have Trust Wallet, which is a decentralized wallet. We contribute to multiple blockchains. There's always more opportunities in the future than there were in the past. Just because we have one business that's making money today doesn't mean we'll have to hold on to it forever. There'll be more business models that we can make money in the decentralized world too. That could be even more valuable. So but it's just the market for that is small today. So we're not working on that today, but it doesn't mean we can't work on that tomorrow. So we're really not afraid of losing a centralized exchange business when the time comes. There'll be many things to do. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. I think one thing that's on everyone's mind is no one saw this, or a lot of people didn't see this FTX collapse coming. And you saw it, you almost sort of predicted it a little bit earlier, it seems, right? You were one of the first people to shed light on this issue of their reserves. What parts of the industry do you think are vulnerable right now? I mean, what's next?
Well, I think many other exchanges potentially may have exposure to FTX going down. Now, FTX going down, there's rumors of Genesis Genesis paused withdrawals, so there's rumors of their liquidity issues there, and now Gemini may be affected by that. So there's multiple interdependencies in the ecosystem. I think people should look for much more independent, well-run, isolated businesses, which Binance.com is one of those examples. We don't rely on other third-party loan providers, etc. So, and the loan business is high risk in the industry. So any loan platforms are at high risk. I'm not saying that all of them are going to have problems. A few may, most of them will be fine. So other than that, I don't like this in any industry, especially a new one like ours. There's many risks. Even in the internet industry, there's many risks. In the traditional industry, there's many risks. So yeah, I mean, in Lebanon, the banks stopped withdrawals, right? So the banks stopped working for a month. Same thing, Ukraine. Well, Ukraine's kind of recovered a bit. So yeah, there's many risks in many different places. I won't be able, to be honest, everything has risks. So I won't be able to name all of them. It's just that people should understand that risk is not a black and white thing. And then they should learn to judge the level of risk for themselves because they are more familiar with the things they interact with or use. And that risk management mindset is really, really important. Don't put all your eggs in one basket and always have a backup way. And yeah, I can talk about that for a long time.
Yeah. Well, we've talked a lot about the FTX news, but I want to ask you about something else that Binance is involved in. You're a global exchange, and I wanted to know what plans, if any, you have in India, because I know you had this deal with WazirX that ended up not working out, and there was a lot of water under the bridge there. Are you planning on doing anything else in terms of expanding in India right now?
To be honest, today for India, I don't think India is a very crypto-friendly environment due to the high tax. So if you're going to tax 1.2% per transaction, there's not going to be that many transactions. So like a user who trades 50 times a day, they will lose like 70% of their money. They're not going to be any volume for like an order book type of exchange. So we don't see we have a viable business in India today. So that's why India is one of the countries I've not visited this year. So we just have to wait. We are in conversations with a number of industry associations, people, influential people. We're trying to put this logic there. So look, if you charge high tax, percentage-wise, you're actually going to get less tax overall because you're going to charge like if you charge 1.2% of zero or $1, you get like 0.1 cents.
Yeah.
Whereas if you charge 0.01% of $10 billion, you get a lot more in taxes. So we're trying to get this message across, but tax policies typically take a long time to change. So we're waiting for that policy to change. Binance goes to countries where the regulations are pro-crypto, pro-business. We don't really go to places where it's really we won't have a sustainable business, or we won't have any business regardless of whether we go or not. So India, unfortunately, given the tax situation, we have to wait.
There's obviously the regulatory issue in India, but I'm wondering if the WazirX deal had anything to do with you pulling out of that market?
WazRax actually less so. WazRax, it was investment where there was some issues, but business deals have issues sometimes. So that itself doesn't.
That's for sure.
Yeah, that itself doesn't cause us to leave an entire market. Whereas we look at the policies or regulations in that market today, we don't think we have a viable business in India today.
One other question about Binance and your business: how do you list tokens on your platform? How do you decide what tokens you're going to actually add? I mean, I know other exchanges people have their thoughts and opinions about their process. So.
Yeah. So I wrote an article from 4 years ago about if you Google Binance CZ listing, CZ's Binance listing tips, you land on the blog article. There's a number of things we look at. The number one is how many users does this coin or project has. If it has a large number of users, then if a product or project have a large number of users, then it has value. The more something is used by people, the more the value it has. So that's the number one criteria. But even that one, how do you measure users is tricky. Like, do you measure daily active addresses? Do you measure TVL? Do you measure Twitter followers? So we use a combination of things, because if we publish one metric, people will game it. And in addition to number of users, we look at product market fit, how strong are the teams. There's a number of metrics we look at. We're actually extremely selective. We list about less than 1% of projects that apply to us. So we do have a selection process that's relatively public, and so we go by that.
There were rumors late last year that excuse me, losing my voice a little bit. There were rumors late last year that you were looking to raise money for the global exchange. Is that still something you're open to, taking external investor money?
We considered it. When you run a business, whether to raise money or not is always a question you ask yourself. It comes up once every month or every quarter or so. We're not. We have our own cash reserve. We're still cash flow positive, so we're not in a cash crunch like we have to raise money. But we looked at whether raising money would help us strategically. So we're considering that always. We wouldn't rule that out, but it's something that we're not like. It's not like if we don't raise money, we're gonna run out of money in the next 6 months or so. So we're not in that situation. A year ago, it was a better time to raise money. The valuations are higher.
A little easier.
There's more money flowing around. Today is a less interesting time to raise money. Today we should invest in other projects instead of raising money ourselves. The valuation's lower, etc. But we're not ruling that out. We always have, I think as a CEO, as a founder, there's always discussions here and there. But we're not super serious about it, but we're always chatting about it.
If you weren't considering raising because you needed capital, then why consider raising at all from external investors?
Well, many investors have a lot of connections, policy influence, government backing, or regulatory influencing, or they could own banks and other things. So partnerships, etc. So there are many advantages in having more people on your cap table, in addition to just money. So so I think there's many different potential reasons. Yeah.
My last question for you is about regulation. I think a lot of people in crypto, a lot of leaders say we want more regulatory clarity, we want industry-friendly regulations, but at the same time, there has to be balance with protecting against some of the things that we saw unfold with FTX this week, for example. What, in your eyes, is a smart and helpful regulatory framework for a company like Binance to operate in?
There's quite a lot. Just on top of my head, I would say number one would be classification of crypto. Don't classify it as one asset type. There are certain coins that look like a security. There are certain coins that look like a commodity. Bitcoin is more like a currency. There's other utility coins. So the first one is like not narrow-minded to sort of define all crypto assets as one asset class, a traditional asset class. That's not what crypto is. Then the second thing is obviously to allow exchanges to operate in those countries. Ideally with offerings on spot, futures, earn, pay, Binance Pay, payments. The products allow us to offer the product we already have today and maybe more. And then KYC AML is important. Almost every single regulator is doing it. But more on the operations of the exchange. What are the ways to store wallet security? How do we ensure that? Asset proof of reserves. How do we do it? That will come. whether stable coins are allowed or what type of stable coins are allowed, whether ICOs are allowed. We of course prefer ICOs are allowed because we think that's one of the killer apps in crypto. Whether NFTs, metaverse, GameFi, or what are the parameters in those areas, and taxes. How do we tax transactions, capital gains, corporate income, etc. We want clarity on those things, and so this many. So we would like to have permission to do all of those things with with a very strong degree of transparency, disclosure. So I think disclosure is completely fine. Transparency is completely fine. So we
like
want
regulation
to, see,
to compel transparency. You're talking about.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah. So and most importantly, allow banks to work with crypto exchanges. Many banks are still kind of skeptical. They don't have instructions on whether they should or should not work with crypto exchanges, and they take the conservative route. So by not working with crypto exchanges, which is actually damaging for them longer term, they're going to miss out on this new technology for money. So there's many things for a friendly regulatory framework. Yeah, and we have conversations with many regulators all around the world. Things are improving even today. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, CZ, for your time. I think that's all we have. I could ask you questions all day, so appreciate you sitting down with me. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Anita. Yeah, thanks for having me.